Previously on the Young Guns.
Let's see what you guys got.
Khadi Natural Rosewater Soap.
Sensodyne Toothpaste.
Gold Bond Lotion.
Livonia lozenges or something.
Ozol Antifungal.
Great job, you guys. I can't wait to see how you finish this. And for those of you guys that are watching, who do you pick to win this challenge?
Welcome to the Young Guns.
Welcome to episode 5 of Young Guns. In the last episode, we saw the 5 young guns work through their design process and taking on the packaging design challenge. This week, we get to see how they finished their design and no holds bar. I'm gonna share what I think. All right, guys, here's the judging criteria that I'm using to pick out the winner of this particular challenge. And there are 4 criteria that I'm looking at in no particular order. So if you're doing this exercise or this challenge on your own, consider the 4 following criteria before you start. The first is brand integrity and product positioning. Are you being true to the brand itself? And are you positioning the product correctly? Meaning you didn't go downstream or go too far upstream. Is it correctly positioned to celebrate the unique features of the product and the brand itself? 2, does it have shelf presence? Am I going to be able to recognize and see this among the sea of competitors from 6 feet away? Will it jump off the shelf? Will it pop? 3, improvement. Did you improve the original design in significant ways? 4, clarity and communication. Did you communicate in a clear manner the unique selling properties of the product or not? Those are my 4 criteria.
This is my redesign. I chose to keep the same color palette. I wanted to keep, some semblance to the older product, so if someone uses this product, they'd recognize it. The Arabic side's also redesigned. I really wanted it to be legible because the design is really minimal. You don't have a lot going on. In Egypt, sometimes people don't really know how to read and they go to the pharmacist and they can tell them, the thing with the yellow top. I'm happy with my design because I think it does what it's supposed to do well. It's legible, it's clear, it's functional. The design fits the product. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, Sharif, interesting layout. Taking a look at your printout right here in front of me. Now, I had a moment to look at the original packaging. And the original packaging is very important. I believe the active ingredient is clotrimazole. And if you look at the original packaging, that's actually quite prominent. It says equally in size as the broad spectrum antifungal. So by making it smaller like this, there's some hierarchy issues there, okay? So I think when we're designing a package, we need to make sure what do we need to communicate and what's the hierarchy. So we have lots of things that we're doing here. Because this is produced by European Egyptian brand, the EE mark, and then there's the name of the product itself, which is Closol, and then there's the active ingredient, which I think Closol is some kind of play off the word clotrimazole. There's a link there. So we kind of have to think about the relationship with those things, and that is probably my biggest critique, because this is a nice clean layout. I like that you have saved the top edge as this yellow trim, which would give it good shelf presence, and that's what we're looking for when we're designing a product, because the consumer is going to walk in the store, they're going to scan, they're going to be looking for distinguishing marks, and I like that you thought about that. You have an additional challenge in that you have Arabic and English, and so there's a lot to work with here. I like the mark that you designed here, the European Egyptian thing. It looks like an element from the periodic table. That's pretty cool. You've chosen a good sans serif typeface. It's very clean. You kept everything forced or justified left, rag, right, which is really nice. So my biggest issue are 2 parts. One is I want to know that this is a spray and not a cream or a pill, because apparently this kind of medicine also comes in different forms. So essentially, your package is like this, and you have some typography here, and you have your mark here. You've made a lot of good decisions here. By keeping everything on a central axis, like this one strong axis, it's used to anchor everything in here. Okay, so if it's a spray, how do we communicate that it's a spray? Well, in the original, there's a silhouette of the bottle itself, and maybe we can crop it off. I forget what it looks like, but maybe there's a cap and then there's a head to it, so it looks like a spray. Maybe that's something that we can do. But I think what might be more interesting is to imply that there's a spray by showing some kind of misting effect. So if we did a pattern of, say, circles. Maybe this is not the exact right way to do this. And then they became more faint as it went down. Maybe we can communicate something. You can try a shape if you want. Just to let people know that it's a spray and it has a misting effect versus a cream or a pill, as I mentioned before. So communicate that it's a spray and communicate the active ingredient. Those are the two important things. Everything else is subservient to that. And when you're designing something like a package like this, you can't neglect these parts, okay?
So this is the final packaging. You can see the complete change that we've made. It's minimalistic, but it also provides all the information you need straight up. I think my design should win because the packaging overall has had a massive makeover. Now, having a makeover to a piece of packaging and design doesn't mean it's going to make it better, but when we're talking about creating a pharmaceutical rebrand that's going to have impact whilst being competitive and actually standing out from the crowd, you can strip away all the unnecessary information and stick to a really clear design.
All right, next up we have Connor's design for Cavonia, and this is some kind of lozenge, and he's been able to simplify the design. It's a really nice, clean layout, and I applaud you for being able to simplify it. It's a vast improvement over the original design in terms of just keeping things nice and simple. It reads really well. Good choices in terms of typefaces, and then reducing down the mark to something that's quite simple. Upon closer inspection, you realize why they chose the Minotaur as a symbol for this product. It's because it turns out there's a warming flavor. It's like split in half. There's a sweet warming flavor on one side and a menthol on the other side. So there's two parts. And as you guys know from mythology, the Minotaur is half bull and half human. So this is very interesting. This one mark that used to be on the front is now put on the back. So you're losing a part of the brand legacy and the brand equity. Furthermore, you've taken the Minotaur and you've reduced them down to a bull, which is confusing to me because I was thinking, like, where have I seen a bull like this before? And I think I've seen it in beef stock cubes where you can actually buy it. Like if it's chicken stock, it looks like a chicken, and then beef-based stock cubes where you put it into water and it flavors the water. This is what this feels like. It feels like a food product, like a beef jerky or something like that. And that's where we see too, like Jack Link's beef jerky. And so this is where I'm having a problem. The weird thing is, in your process of designing the bull, I actually like the outline version that you had more than the filled in silhouetted, because the outline version, it implied it had more dimension, and the silhouetted one flattens everything out. But the biggest crime here is the fact that you missed this part about the two parts of the lozenge, which makes it unique, and you've broken that part. So when we're working on a brand, make sure you look at what's important in terms of the product itself, what makes it unique, and the brand equity that's built into this product itself. Otherwise, I think the design is really sharp, very strong, but this is a big miss for me.
I wanted the design to feel very pharmaceutical aesthetically, since the product itself is engineered for a specific dental health issue and it's not purely a lifestyle brand. I tried to do this by keeping everything on a grid and using a lot of white space. I used the smile icon throughout the design to give the brand a consistent identity, which could be applied across other products and applications. I do feel it's the most visually striking and interesting, and that I had the most challenging package to work with. The competition is strong though, more so than I thought. A couple of the guys surprised me for sure.
All right, so next up we have Sean Campbell, and he's done Sensodyne. This is a real challenge because he's picked the one that has the most amount of copy for a fairly small package itself. There's a lot of things that we have to communicate on this package, a lot of different ideas. Sensodyne's, I think their product differentiation is the fact that they're for sensitive teeth. So you want all the cavity protection and the fluoride, and you want to fight against plaque and gingivitis, all that kind of thing, but you want to communicate that it's sensitive, okay? First of all, really nice layout, beautiful typography, very modern, very clean. It does have a very clinical pharmaceutical feel to it. It feels sterile, which is kind of what you want. You don't want anything to feel dirty. Good, clean colors, and I see that there's a subtle gradient in here, and I think that adds a little bit of warmth to it. And he's playing off this motif, and at first he was describing this as a smile, but when you show top smile and a bottom smile, then it looks like it could be a frown. It could be a frown for the top one and a smile for the bottom one. This one is really about sensitivity. And I think you're really close to a good design here. I'm gonna just draw on top of it so you guys can see. If you have sensitive teeth, which I do, it's kind of almost like the shock that you feel, an electric shock, like when you drink something really cold or really hot. So I thought perhaps these could be shock waves coming out from the end. So maybe there was an opportunity here for you to draw something in to kind of almost make it look like a Wi-Fi signal on both sides. It's gonna feel like it's an echoing, rippling effect out of it, like it's an alarm, like bzz. And I think that might be something that you can consider. The other thing I noticed is on the package cover itself, you need to include the net weight, which is 3.4 ounces. That's a big miss. You put the 3.4 ounce right here. That is an essential piece of information. It needs to be pulled out of this thing and made much more prominent. The other comment I was gonna make is perhaps the tracking on the word Sensodyne might be a little bit wide. It's gonna be a lot harder to use. I would say tighten that up a little bit. It'll make a more compact, much more legible word mark, and I think that's all you need to do is tighten that up. Overall, very nice design, and I like how this line graphic continues from the back side to the front, or it continues across two sides. What do I mean by that? So if I were to draw this out, it would look something like this in three-dimensional form. So when you're designing a package, don't think of it, even though you're laying it out in a flat space, think of it as a three-dimensional sculpture, which it really is, consisting of 6 sides. So what he's done with this element here is he's created a border, and he's wrapped it around to the other side, and he continues it on here. There's a lot of fun variations that you can play around with this. So you guys can see in my drawing here, that continues the design from one side to the other. And think about that when you're designing packaging. This is what makes a packaging designer, not an editorial designer, okay, how it wraps over. It would have been also kind of nice to maybe reverse some of this out and also play around with the edge itself. For example, this is maybe not a solution for this, but to put the word Sensodyne like right on the edge, or toothpaste, or some other kind of piece of information. I'm just gonna use a few letters here. But you can really push the boundaries and create some visual tension right there. I think that could look good. You can also do this number 1 symbol, which is also a nice looking thing. I'm gonna try and sketch it in there. Cut it out of the negative space here, like this. Number 1, dentist recommended, and add the number symbol. I think young people call that the hashtag symbol, but it's the pound, or the number 1 symbol, and you can cut it out of there. So that's how we can start taking advantage of this. Now, you can also use grid lines to help you, because if you were to follow this line up and bring this over here, you can add a design element right here. I don't know what piece of information needs to be conveyed there. But you're thinking about everything in a dimensional way and how everything ties together, okay? As much as you can, think about it as a three-dimensional sculpture. That's what we're trying to do here. Really nice job. A couple like missteps here in terms of this element. There's one other thing I want to point out here is you have these borders, and I like the fact that they kind of wrap around the other side, but try making your borders much thicker and see how they change and impact the design. Because when it's drawn like this, it feels like a rule versus a shape. And you can create a lot more interesting layouts, because now that feels like it's being grouped together, but it's much bolder, so your eye is drawn towards that as well. You can continue that, of course, throughout the package and bring it through. Here's another example of where you could do that, which is you can thicken up these lines. So there's one more variation to this when you have type like this, right? I'm going to show you. So when you have lines like this, it helps to group elements together. So you have copy like this. Now I'll show you, I'll flip this over. So if you have text like this, right, you can use a rule. You don't have to draw it all the way across. A variant to that is you just create a dash outside, and that groups it together. Rules are really great, rules meaning lines, are really great to group different pieces of information together that don't look good together. For example, if you have something that's really long, and you have like a numeral here, and you have whatever, another number, the rules make it look uniform, because it gives our eye something else to lock into, which is the beginning and the end of the line. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay, so if you look at the final product, I believe it matches the price point the product has. which is 30-40 rupees more than an average soap in India. I accomplished what I set out to accomplish, which was to make the look more premium, expensive, or basically match its price point. It has that black band going around it with a slight pattern layered under it, which makes it look appealing, jumping out to you from the shelves.
All right, Arun, I have some big problems with this, and the fact of the matter is that the product itself looks beautiful, and that's its unique selling point, and the fact that you want to cover it up really takes away from it. Usually when people cover things up, they have something to hide. This thing essentially only has 3 ingredients: rose water, glycerin, and vegetable oils. Considering that there are a multitude of formulations, I think it would have been good actually for you to try to do 2 or 3 versions of this, because some of them have honey or sandalwood and other kind of scents and extractions, and I think that's what makes the product unique. There are beautiful colors involved here, and I'm sure they spent a lot of time thinking about the coloring and the impact it has on you on an emotional level. Usually when you work with high-end premium products, less is more. So although this might be a good design for some packaging for a stationery store, or I can see like office products, something that you would set on top of your desk. When we're talking about a soap and a bath and beauty product, I think the way to go is to simplify. Now, I did a little research here, and I'm no fashion or beauty expert myself. When I look at high-end beauty products, I think of Aesop or I think of Clinique, and it's very, very minimal. It's very restrained. And since you have this beautiful block of color, just to really strip down the graphics and make it super clean and really avoid these patterns, because this becomes decorative. The more decorative you make something, the more kind of fancy and frou-frou it feels. And that seems to go against the simplicity of this product, which only has 3 ingredients. So that's my biggest problem. This mark itself, I see what you're doing here because you know what it means. Sukari, according to what Wikipedia tells me, is hand-spun or hand-woven natural fiber cloth from India, Bangladesh, or Pakistan, and it's made mostly out of cotton. What that has to do with soap, I have no idea. And so this is where we're just designing one product or a product line or family, and we don't need to redesign the parent company's logo. That might be the parent company, like Johnson & Johnson is the parent company to many products out here, but that should take second seat to the product itself. And in this case, celebrate that it's rosewater soap or sandalwood soap or whatever it is. And then that plays as a secondary element as the house brand and not the product itself. I hope that makes sense. I think that's where you went really wrong. Plus, when you design something that's very centered like this in the typography layout, it makes it feel very old-fashioned. I think you could use a little bit of contemporary design in here. And you don't have to overdo it, just do something very simple. That's it.
I narrowed it down to 2 logos, and I couldn't really decide in the end which one I wanted to actually go with, so I ended up using both, having one as a main brand logo and the other is an abstracted textural GB shape in the background. I also think that just adding some gold, even if it was small, I think gave the brand name a little home to sit in. I really do think I should win because I picked the worst original item and I think I had the greatest before and after transformation. The process I went through I think was the most thorough, using Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator, all for their dedicated tasks. I think I challenged myself and I used a bottle shape other than a rectangle, which I don't think anybody else did either.
All right, Spencer, maybe we weren't explicitly clear, but those of you guys that are watching and doing this packaging challenge, you're not supposed to change the original package and shape itself. This is a design assignment, so when you go and change the bottle shape, you're asking the client to abandon probably custom tooling in a shape that they have a lot of equity in, and you don't want to do that because this is where I think the young designer meets the old designer, myself as the old designer. To ask the client to change the shape would cost them a lot of money to do retooling and go through a whole design process, and you don't want to do that. So this was a design assignment. So you can paint the bottle differently, you can add labels, you can add all kinds of things, you can subtract things, but I didn't really want you to change it now. We'll take that off the table because that would derail the entire spirit of what you're trying to do here. And you are correct, it is a pretty fugly bottle to begin with and design. So pretty much anything you're going to do is going to be a vast improvement on this. Now, in the video you mentioned that you've picked 2 logos because you couldn't decide. Not a great rationale, but here's the interesting thing. I don't see 2 logos here, I actually see 3. Do you guys see 3? Comment below if you see 3 or 2 logos. I'll give you 2 more seconds to comment. All right, When I look at this, I see a monogram, which is this GB that you have in the center, and it's a nicely designed GB configuration. There's some strange thing going on with the bottom of this here, and I'm not quite sure what the heck that is, because it's neither connected to the G, and it's a weird extension of the B. So there's something funny. And then you have these little parts that are missing from it, and I think that's just allow our eye to go through it. I think that's a detail. It's neither here nor there. And the second logo that you talked about is this larger G B in the background, but the way that the B runs into the bond, I'm not sure I read it as a GB. I kind of read it as a GH. That's a problem. Then there's the third logo in here, which is the word mark itself, which is this contrast between the light sans serif typeface and a bold italic version of a sans serif typeface. There's a lot going on just for this section here, right? So what is this? This is body lotion. How do I know? I don't know, because the type is like super small down below. There's a little seal here that you created that says medicated, and I think that makes it look official. Seals can do that. But it seems like these elements, this one, this, and this, are not necessarily working together. How do I know that? Because there's nothing to tie the designs together. Generally speaking, you look for an aesthetic, like a shape, like this box, or these curvatures or these ligatures that you've made from the B, and you extend that through the design. For example, this could continue down here, and maybe it comes back through here and brings that part of the design together. So now we're going to tie those elements together. So that way it feels like it's one design and not three parts. Right now it feels definitely like there's an island here and an island there and something else down here. Bring these things together, okay? Next, if we're looking at the back, thanks for putting out front and back so I know. So here's the back. You've got this strange curve here, and I think you're trying to tie it to this, but it's not quite the same vibe. It would be the same vibe if this GB were designed a little differently. For example, instead of having a square bottom there, that you did this. Then those two shapes would tie together. So this is the G, and I think it goes something like that. Draw the serif in there. Then you have this B. And somehow you'd work it together. So it seems like you have a lot of different ideas, and I would prefer in the future challenges if you were to spend more time resolving one of these ideas versus jumping from idea to idea because you couldn't pick. Maybe you need to get some feedback from somebody objective and look at it and say, look, which do you prefer? Which best communicates this brand? And the fact that it's body lotion. And this is, it even says extra strength here, so I would love it if you were to be able to communicate some healing property, some kind of sense of relief or moisturization that's happening here, because it says relieves, moisturizes, soothes. Those are things that are kind of important to communicate, or itchy skin. Lastly, the seal that you designed here at this scale looks like it's almost impossible to read. I would really work on the contrast, and it looks like the type that lives on this arc could stand to be a bit bigger so that you can actually read it. And I think that's kind of it. So in summary here, simplify, refine, and pick your best mark and really get that to work, and tie that design in together so it feels like a cohesive unit and not three separate components. That's it. All right, guys, having finished the review, I'm going to tally up the score and announce who I picked to be the winner of this challenge. Okay, this was a tough one. But for me, the winner of this week's challenge is...
Oops, my bad.
Sean Campbell. Congratulations, good job, keep up the work. You took on a big challenge and you nailed it. You hit it out of the park. There are a couple of small things I would suggest you consider, but overall, excellent job. Well done. All right. As you guys know, this series is called Young Guns. That means these are really young designers. Some went to school. Most of them are self-taught. That makes them super ahead of the game. So if you've been impressed, as I have been, that the fact that these young gentlemen have been able to design and go to the store and produce a package in the length at which they went to in terms of designing the mock-ups, really incredible. I'm blown away by it, especially if they haven't gone to design school, because this is the kind of stuff I went to design school to learn how to do. So really good job, guys. Room for improvement is to really understand that you as the designer are trying to solve a communication, a business, and a positioning problem with the product itself. This is not designed for design's sake. So I'm hoping that you use this knowledge and information moving into the next challenge. Really try to understand the 2 or 3 key things that make your product unique and celebrate those things. And think, is the decision I'm making in terms of the design, the colors, the materials, or the way I'm packaging it, is it helping to communicate those things or not? And if it's not, don't do it. Now, if you're like many of the people who've been watching this, you guys are inspiring a lot of young people out there. So good job overall. Guys, now you've heard my thoughts. I'm curious to hear what you're thinking and feeling about the critique that I gave you. Did you feel it was fair? Did you feel it was honest? Was it too hard or too easy on you? And moreover, I want to know what you learned from taking on this challenge itself. Did you struggle anywhere with design, ideation, typography, picking colors, materials, or building it itself? What did you learn?